Good evening and welcome to the Cabinet meeting of the 3rd of June. Great to welcome everybody here today. We've got apologies for absence from Nina and Luella, and Harinder is running a few minutes late. He'll be with us hopefully by item 5. Are colleagues happy for me to sign a record of decisions? Yes. Thank you. Are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests? Nobody is interesting today. Before we move on to the next item, I just want to thank our 3 questioners tonight, and indeed Democratic Services, for facilitating this. This is a historic moment, the first time ever in the history of Medway Council that we're taking questions from the public. So I thank our 3 questioners for firstly noticing, because sometimes it's not always easy to see things are happening, so thank you for that. And thanks to Alex, who coincidentally happens to be taking all 3 questions on behalf of the Cabinet. Thanks for doing all the hard work for this item. And I think if you ever wanted a very timing in politics is everything. So when other councils are cancelling meetings and potentially acting illegally, we're opening up democracy and saying, actually, we want to hear from the public as much as possible, which is why we've created this session. So just to run through the rules, and for those of you who have ever been to full council, these will sound familiar. The questioners will be able to ask their question in full. If they're not here on the night, it will be put as written to the Cabinet member in question. It happens to be, I can see we've got all 3 questioners tonight, so that's just theoretical for the future. The Cabinet member responsible will give their response. Again, no more than 3 minutes for the response, please. And then we will, and if the Cabinet member, again, hypothetically moving forward, if they're not here, somebody else will answer on their behalf. And then the questioner will have an opportunity for a short supplementary question related directly to the original question, which again, the Cabinet member will be able to give an answer of up to 3 minutes. We have a period of 20 minutes for this. I would say to colleagues, just to make them aware, for future reference, if we're in a situation where we've got to question number 7 and there's one more question left in 19 minutes, we will be taking that 8th question. We're going to take as many as we can within reason. But if there's 400 on the agenda paper, we're not going to get through all of them. So it's my real pleasure, as someone who believes in democracy, to welcome up the first questioner, who is Elizabeth McVeigh. If you'd like to come to the microphone, I think it will be on. Yep. 2 for the price of 1. What a bargain. Elizabeth, please, the floor is yours to ask your first question. There we go.
Is that better? Yeah.
We can hear you now.
Okay, so the question is, considering the proximity of St Andrew's School and St Margaret's at Troy Town School to the King's School, to what extent was the health and safety of pupils attending these schools taken into consideration in the development of the King's Pre-Preparatory School and Nursery Street Scheme proposals?
Thank you. Alex?
Thank you for your thoughtful question, Mrs McVeigh, regarding the potential impact of the proposed school street scheme. The health and safety of all pupils across Medway is a key priority in the development of any school street scheme.
Is your thing switched on?
Sorry, I can't hear you, Alex.
It is on.
You need to switch yours on.
The health and safety of all pupils across Medway is a key priority in the development of any school street scheme. While the initial focus of the King's School proposal was to address specific concerns around road safety and congestion directly outside the school, we are also carefully considering wider implications, including potential traffic displacement and its effect on surrounding roads and nearby schools. As part of our commitment to creating safer, healthier streets, the Council has introduced school streets at 7 locations, with 9 more currently in development. These schemes are designed not only to improve safety, but also to encourage more sustainable travel choices for families and the wider community. To support this, we have recently introduced a school streets road safety lesson as part of our broader road safety education offering to schools. This new lesson complements our ongoing efforts to promote active travel, including regular dialogue with schools to support effective school travel planning and the delivery of targeted road safety interventions. Our officers continue to work closely with all schools in the area, including St Margaret's and St Andrews, to ensure that any changes to local traffic patterns are managed in a way that maintains pupil safety and supports our shared goals of reducing congestion, encouraging active travel and improving air quality.
Thank you very much, Alex. Mrs McVeigh, would you have a short supplementary question?
I think the worry we have is it seems the head teachers of the schools involved have not been consulted. It seems all three head teachers, including King's, don't really approve of the scheme as it's proposed.
And Alex?
I certainly don't recognise that analysis, that there's been consultation between officers and senior leadership teams at all schools. In fact, the King's proposal was prompted by a direct request for assistance from King's School itself. So it is certainly something that we have engaged on, and there has been lots of opportunity to speak to our officers and put forward alternative proposals, suggestions, improvements, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you very much. Mr McVeigh, question B, please.
Thanks, Mr Maple. Councillor Patterson, in the Cabinet notes of the 19th of November last year, the reason for changing the original proposals to the King's Prep street scheme was to allay the concerns of Roebuck residents about traffic displacement. As traffic displacement is raised as a concern, can you explain how the traffic displaced by the proposed scheme will affect the two other nearby schools, St Margaret's at Troy Town and St Andrews, which are approximately 200 metres distant from King Edward Road, in which the King's School is situated?
Thank you. Alex?
Thank you for your question, Lawrence. As with any changes to the highway network, it's important to acknowledge that new schemes, particularly school streets, can result in some level of traffic displacement, especially in the short term, as travel behaviours adjust. Now, I know the Cabinet report you're referring to, and I think what I would say about that phraseology is it's perhaps slightly clumsy to talk about displacement as the rationale for the inclusion of Roebuck. In my view, this was never about displacement, but about the fact that it has a direct pedestrian access point to the very school entrance, which the original scheme, which only included King Edward Road and Lockington Grove, sought to tackle. So it was an omission that I alerted officers to immediately, and certainly came through in feedback in the initial consultation. So I don't think that's so much about displacement as about recognising the nature of Roebuck as essentially and de facto a street with a school on it, albeit indirectly through a pedestrian access route. However, the primary objective of a school street is to enhance safety for vulnerable road users, particularly children, and by reducing vehicle movements directly outside school gates during peak times. This not only improves safety and air quality, but also encourages more families to choose active options, such as walking, cycling or scooting to school. Evidence from other school street schemes, including St Peter's Infant School on Holcombe Road, has shown that when roads are made safer and more welcoming, there's a measurable increase in active travel. This contributes to healthier lifestyles for children and families, reduces congestion and supports broader environmental goals. To date, feedback from those Tranche 1 school street schemes has not indicated any significant or sustained issues with traffic displacement affecting nearby areas. A statutory consultation on the proposed scheme for the King's School concluded in late April, and the Council is currently reviewing all responses carefully. Should the scheme proceed, a post-implementation monitoring period will be undertaken to assess its impact, including any effects on surrounding roads and nearby schools, such as St Margaret's and St Andrews. We remain committed to ensuring that any unintended consequences are identified and addressed appropriately while continuing to promote safer, healthier and more sustainable travel choices for our school communities.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you for that. I'm not sure I quite understood it. Your reference to the St. Peter's School Street, I think is, what's the word, unusual for want of a better way. St. Peter's is a dead end, as you know, your children went there. It's about 300 yards long. It's not a group of interconnected streets. There are no schools near it. You haven't really addressed the problem of parking, parents, safety at St Andrews and St Margaret's, and the problem that parents who are displaced by the school street from parking, dropping their children off there, having to cross the Maidstone Road, which, as we know, is busy at the best of times, even busier during school drop-off and pick-up times. And you mentioned there your consultation. Well, this from your own minutes. The question is, do you agree with the proposal to introduce school street scheme? What's the word? Strongly agree and agree is 76. 11 are indifferent and 144 are against it. Where does that leave your consultation?
Alex.
I think, again, there's an unfortunate use of words, and I think that perhaps it would be more helpful if the initial consultation were described differently in terms of how it actually has been responded to as more of a co-design stage and an opportunity for feedback from the general public. What it certainly isn't, and I would never, and have never suggested otherwise, is it's not a referendum. We're not conducting street-by-street referenda on this issue. It's a road safety matter, and it's a decision that, rightly or wrongly, and whether you agree with it or not, I will take on the basis of road safety considerations rather than the particular desires of individual schools. You mentioned St Andrews Prep School, which actually, quite independently of the King's School proposal, causes, in my view, unacceptable traffic chaos along Watts Avenue. It's entirely caused by parents choosing to drop off outside the school, which I think is, if that's the school transport plan for St Andrews Prep, they don't have one. I think it's unacceptable to think in 2025, with the number of cars on our roads, that chauffeuring able-bodied pupils by able-bodied parents directly to the door of a school is appropriate, regardless of the inconvenience that it causes residents and the danger that it puts pedestrians in. I mentioned St Peter's Infants because, as you know, we both have a particular affection for that school, but I could easily have mentioned any of the other 6 sites, which include, in some cases, school street zones, so actually blocking off a succession of streets, or in one case, we have a school street which is actually on a through road. So it's not to suggest that the success or otherwise is based on only delivering school streets in a particular type of inoffensive road layout. We have actually put this into action in 7 locations with minimal concern and issue, and certainly a lot of support amongst the parent and teacher bodies in those schools where they have been put in place. So I think it's really important to note that consultation responses are very important, and I have asked people to feed back and offer their views, yes, but what I'm driving at is not whether you agree with school streets or not. That is my view, is that school streets are advantageous for school safety. That's been demonstrated not just in Medway but around the country. So you can disagree with me on whether you think school streets are a good idea or not. We'll have to respectfully disagree if you think otherwise. But it's certainly not that views are not being taken into account, but that in fact, there is a simple difference of opinion, and basing my decisions, as I will when I receive the report on the King's proposal, I will base it on all the facts available to me.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the questions. So the draft minutes, and Vanessa will be able to give a full answer, but the actual formal minutes don't get signed off until the following meeting, but the draft minutes, Vanessa will move to.
So, yeah, this transcript of the question and answers will actually be appended in the next meeting's agenda. And obviously, you can look back at the recording of this online as well in between.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That moves us to the historic first and second question, moves us to the historic third question. Don't worry, when we get to the historic 402nd question, they probably won't be quite so historic. Brian, please take a seat, make yourself comfortable, and please ask your question.
Thank you for drawing attention. Overview and scrutiny.
Sorry, I think, have you got your just press it once and let go.
At a recent
No, hold fire, Brian, sorry. Literally press the button and let go. Just press it. Just literally go boop. Oh, and now it's not working. Brilliant.
That's it, when the red light's on, you can tell it's on.
Okay.
There we go. 7th time lucky. Go for it.
At a recent Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting, a councillor stated that he lacked information about the Brook car park. Full disclosure, he also did mention Britton Farm, but as I'm from Chatham, my focus is on the Brook. More recently, a cabinet decision about disposing of the Upper Mount car park was made without published information being made available about the use of that car park. This car park has now been closed, and as of today, that car park is still being used and people are getting penalty charge notices for parking there. Is there a strategic approach to car parking in Chatham, especially given the amount of residential accommodation being built and the stress on retail?
Thank you. Alex.
Thank you for your question, Brian. The Council does take a strategic approach to the management of car parking. The Regen's Overview and Scrutiny Committee at its meeting of the 26th of February considered the future of various operational properties, including the Brook multi-storey car park and the Upper Mount car park in Chatham. Subsequently, Cabinet at its meeting on the 11th of March 2025 declared the Brook multi-storey car park and the Upper Mount car park surplus. Committee and Cabinet were made aware that the net income after all costs from the Upper Mount car park was less than £13,000 per annum. That's less than £124 per space per annum. The net income from the Brook multi-storey car park after all costs is under £25,000 per annum. That's less than £47 per space per annum. And the multi-storey car park needs £3.895 million spent on it over the next 10 years. Both car parks are not well used, and recently levels 4 and 5 of the Brook multi-storey car park have been taken out of use entirely. Modelling of car park use in Chatham demonstrates that closure of the Brook multi-storey car park, Union Place, the Upper Mount car park and the Market Hall car parks have already closed. Sorry, Union Place and Market Hall car parks have already closed, will create demand for an extra 102 spaces in Chatham. And these can be accommodated at all but peak days at Christmas within the Pentagon Centre, which is 433 spaces, and at the Riverside car park, which is 113 spaces. This will bring in additional income for these car parks. At present, there are 102 disabled spaces in Chatham and 2,116 standard spaces. The loss of the two car parks represents a loss of 1.96% of these disabled spaces and 30.67% of the standard spaces. New developments are required to provide the appropriate amount of parking that is needed to serve them. For example, the old bus station will be brought into use for parking to serve the development of Mountbatten House and the waterfront.
Thank you. Brian, a short supplementary.
Thank you for that. I must confess I hadn't seen that information, and it would be nice if it was published clearly. My supplementary question is, what do you think of the notion that the local authority should take steps to actively increase the use of its own and perhaps other car parks, including by carefully monitoring it and measuring it? And of course, use of the car parks could be made by residents and by shoppers. So why not actively promote the car parks that we have got, rather than just use them as an opportunity to become a brownfield site and build upon?
Alex.
Thanks, Brian. Well, certainly more customers using our car parks would be music to my ears. It's no secret that this administration's goal is to increase the generation of income rather than cut vital services. So absolutely, and we're open to any suggestions as to how the promotion of those car parks could be done better. So I'm all ears, and I think we could probably pick that up outside this meeting, Brian.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Brian. That concludes, within 20 minutes, the first historic, that's the last time I'll say historic for this item, public question. So again, thank you to those who have asked questions. Again, thanks to Alex for your answers and supplementary answers. Before we move to the next item, only because I'm always very cautious and wanting to be careful around this particular topic, Bhupinder, I wonder if there is any advice and guidance that is helpful for us tonight to consider when talking about this item, which of course is only making recommendations to full council, is not making recommendations on the actual local plan. So just so I don't end up tripping over at the 99.99th hour, any advice and guidance you think that's appropriate before we start this debate, I think would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, the local plan is a very big policy for this council, and it's going to be considered at a special council meeting on the 26th of June. As I've already advised members in writing about a week or so ago, I would just simply reiterate that when members will be considering any aspect of the local plan, that they should always keep an open mind until that they've read all the documents, until a full debate has occurred, and then only come to a view on which way they're going to vote immediately before the vote. If members have articulated or conducted themselves in a manner historically that members of the public may believe that they have formed a fixed view, they should make it clear, if relevant, that they are reading the documents due to be published shortly with an open mind. They will consider and take into account all views expressed, and only at that point will they make their minds up firmly to make to vote on the matter. I don't think there's anything more that I can really add, and particularly in relation to tonight's report. It mainly deals with process issues.
I'm incredibly grateful, and also I'd want to place on record my thanks to yourself, Bhupinder, for the big amount of work that you're carrying out in ensuring that all 59 members are very, very clear on what's expected, particularly when we get to the special council meeting. And of course, it's worth saying, again, for the avoidance of doubt, of course, the report that we have tonight is around 25 pages. The report that we'll have for the special council meeting will be substantially more. On that basis, I'm very happy to move to Simon to move the report on the publication of the Medway Local Plan Regulation 19.
Thanks very much, Vince, and thank you, colleagues. I think probably at the outset it's worth saying more thanks actually, to be honest. This it's taken, from our point of view, 2 years of solid work, but equally, before we took control of the administration 2 years ago, a lot had gone on to make us, to get us to the stage where we are at the moment. So from the Chief Executive and Director of Place, all the way down through to the Head of Planning and his team, and everything that they've done to get us here, a huge thank you from us all, I think, for what's been achieved. I'd also like to thank my Cabinet colleagues. Several of you have been part of this process as well, including our 3 new MPs who also helped with the process from up till last year, and also to the Head of Planning Committee and the Deputy Head of Planning Committee, Chair of Planning Committee, who also helped with this process. But then also another massive thank you, and this comes out in our public consultation, is to our community, the people of Medway. We've had a huge response from so many people across the community in our consultations on this, and it has really been massive and very welcome to have so much feedback from everybody as to what people think about this hugely important document. We were elected in 2023 and determined to deliver this plan, and we're now just there on the cusp of getting it through, and hopefully we will achieve this in the next few weeks. The local plan is probably, alongside our Medway, our one Medway council plan and our budget plans for the next however long it takes, our most important piece of work that we do. It defines our community for the future across the whole of Medway. It really is important that we get it right and we get it sustainable and we get it put into the sort of public domain as much as possible. It's all about our communities. It's about the infrastructure that our communities need, the homes, the jobs, the impact on the environment of development, and it's based around the key principles of sustainable development. The report we have tonight has got 4 recommendations. I'm going to read them out so that everyone's clear. Firstly, to approve the publishing of the pre-submission draft Medway Local Plan Regulation 19 for a period of 6 weeks for written representations, and I'll touch on that again in a moment. Approve submission of the proposed submission local plan and supporting documents to the Secretary of State for examination with the Regulation 19 representations. That's when we send the whole package off to the government. Grant a delegation to the Director of Place in consultation with the portfolio holder to prepare an addendum to the plan that may be necessary to address soundness issues raised by representations received on the Regulation 19 draft plan, and to include this in the submission. So if anything comes up in the next phase of submissions that we get over the 6-week period, we need to be conscious that we may have to build that into our submission to the Secretary of State. And grant a delegation to the Director of Place in consultation with the portfolio holder to agree any main modifications and to undertake a 6-week public consultation on any main modifications that arise out of a local plan examination process, and for this information to be forwarded to the planning inspectors. Again, so we're covering ourselves if we do have to make any changes. This is the process by which we'll make those changes. So that's just the sort of the nuts and bolts of tonight's decision, if you like. And as I said earlier, we've already carried out a considerable amount of consultation. The regulations, this is Regulation 19 in the planning regulations. Regulation 18 requires us to carry out public consultations, and we've done it twice, which is not normal, actually. Normally there's just one Regulation 18 consultation, but we felt this is so important we would have to do 2. In 2023 and in 24, we've carried out these detailed consultations in order to make sure that we gather as much of the views of our communities as possible. Equally, we've done our cross-border discussions with our neighbouring authorities to make sure that we've got their views in place. We've set up a cross-party working group, and we've liaised with a number of other bodies, particularly the Rural Liaison Committee, which has now changed its name, and it's just board now, which has just popped out of my head for a minute. Thank you very much, that's the board. So they've had several presentations on this as well. So the parishes have been closely involved in our rural communities. Subject to the approval this evening, the draft will then be presented to the full council at a special meeting on the 26th of June. And subject to the full council approving it, we will then have this 6-week period where further written representations can be submitted by anybody. The full details of how this will be done will be made public and very easy to follow, and we'll also incorporate in that a number of public presentations as well, so that people can come along and talk to officers, as we did before with our Reg 18 consultations. So a full sort of common strategy is behind this. And in this respect, then, we are trying to achieve what we're talking about, the legal compliance that we need to do in this process. And there's three elements. We need to be legally compliant on a number of issues in terms of planning law. Soundness is a funny word that's used in local plans, but to have a sound local plan means it needs to be doable, basically. That's really what it boils down to. And we have to be able to achieve what we're trying to do in the 15-year lifespan of the plan. So delivering the jobs, delivering the infrastructure, delivering the housing that's proposed, the retail, all those issues have to go in. In fact, there's a long list of sort of needs that are identified, including housing, retail, employment, transport, environmental issues. Even flood risk is in that list of things that we have to achieve if we're going to have a sound plan. And then finally, we have a duty to cooperate with our neighbouring authorities, which we've been doing on a regular basis in order to get this through. All of this is summed up in the National Planning Policy Framework, which was renewed just last year, so we've had to comply with that. And then as we move through this process then, one of the most controversial issues, as always, is housing. The plan covers a great deal of other stuff, but obviously people do focus on that, and we are very conscious of how housing is a contentious issue. And on this specific issue, Medway has a requirement, and this is a sort of housing need thing identified by the government, not by ourselves, of delivering over 1,600 houses per year in the lifespan of the plan. So it's very important that we get this right, because where those homes go and what kind of homes they are is fundamental to the future of our how we do things in Medway, our whole community. So, for example, we've identified through the assessments that have been carried out, there is a need of over 27% of affordable housing in that housing delivery. In addition to that, a further 10% needs to take into consideration our ageing population. It's that kind of detailed research that's been done by officers to get those figures, and we need to be able to deliver that kind of housing need for our communities. Our environment is also hugely important. As we are fully aware, large areas of Medway are protected under national and international law, and we can't be building houses all over those, so that restricts the areas where we can put the housing that we want to do and all the other activities that we're trying to do. And just last week, we declared proclaimed indeed, because the King wanted it, a new national nature reserve over at Ranscombe and Cuxton area, which is very exciting for our environmental projects. So I'd put that in because it's really important. And also, we've got to consider all the other impacts from outside our area. We've got local government review coming up. We've also got a Lower Thames crossing, which is going to deliver a huge amount of traffic in our direction, and how we manage that and how we plan for that is also part of our local plan process. It's complicated, it's difficult, it's been a huge amount of work, as I've said, and we're now sort of close to that point where we feel we can deliver it in that way. And on completion of the 6-week period of written representations, we will then be in a position to send the draft plan plus the representations, we just bundle them up, off to the planning inspectorate, and it takes about a year for them to go through all the detail. That's how much work's involved from them. So we should hear a result on that sometime towards the end of next year, hopefully earlier than that, but it just depends on how much other work they've got to do. So finally, it's important to stress the consequences of living without a local plan. Our current plan dates back to 2003. Its policies and guidance are way out of date. It should have been replaced a long time ago, and for a number of reasons that didn't happen. We're now in that position, and it's left us in that position of speculative development. So, for example, on the Hoo Peninsula, there's been a lot of development going ahead, which we didn't really want, and we objected to, but it went ahead anyway through planning inquiries. In the Capstan Valley, we've seen the same problem, and over in Rainham, we've seen similar problems there, where we've had to deal with these new housing estates that have gone up unplanned for, and the infrastructure that's needed for them has proved extremely difficult to deliver and is continuing to do so. So the local plan gives us that certainty of where things are going to happen, and we can provide all the support and infrastructure for our growing population that's necessary in a planned and organised way. Sustainable development has some clear technical definitions, and it's really based around three principles. One is sustainable economy for the future. The other one is a sustainable communities themselves and what they need, everything from schools right through to health and well-being and stuff like that. And there's also a sustainable environment. We need to work towards that cleaner and greener environment. And I like to think of it in a more simple way, a simple, more pragmatic way. Our history defines who we are, but this plan is about what we do for the next generation of people who are going to be living in Medway.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. That's a detailed and very clear overview of both the process to date and what the next steps will be, both tonight and after the special full council. I'll take Teresa first and then Harinder.
Thank you, Simon, and can I add my thanks, especially to you for the steady hand that you've had on this process and the way that you hit the ground as soon as we came into administration. I always say to people when I look at the number of outside bodies that councillors have to be on, Simon tops the poll. And that's because you've made it very clear that you want the local plan to reflect all of the needs and all of the ideas from everybody who's going to be involved in this process, and your own commitment to environmental protection and to the climate agenda shines through this plan. And I think it's important we must not forget that. I also want to thank the teams of officers and you, Bhupinder, for your, again, another steady hand on more extravagant behaviour relating to the local plan. And for me, in my portfolio, I've been particularly pleased at the way that the health and social care community have been listened to this time around. This plan has been, along with the planning officers, to my health and wellbeing board so that we could hear from partners in health about how they felt about the infrastructure needs. It's been very well sort of carried through our directorate so that senior leaders and lots of staff in adult social care have been able to emphasise our needs for lifetime housing, for a forever policy towards the people that we care for and will continue to. And when we talk about growth, as you said, we've got growth at both ends of the population. We've got new people moving into the Medway towns, but in a very welcome way, we've got people who are here already who are living longer, and I want them to live well and to live happy lives. And the local plan is a big part of that, and I think we've been quite successful in making developers understand that. The other thing that I think is a feature of this draft plan is fairness. It would have been an easy option to dump development in areas where there are fewer houses and not take the care that has been taken to think about the way we can grow the urban areas. And the design codes that have come into force as far as working in the urban centres, I think have been a very welcome change and really help people to build on heritage, the kind of stuff that we've seen for the intra area, for example, a very, very close study of the heritage there, the way that that area has come together, the design code for Chatham, a long neglected part, and then a serious attention to the way that Gillingham can develop that because it's been neglected for a long time. So I don't think people should be afraid of this plan because it is a fair plan. The development that we have to have because our population is growing, because people want to come and live here in Medway and help us to grow the economy, can be achieved through this plan because it's fair, because it's proportionate, and actually because it's very well controlled. And I feel that I can relax a bit and not worry about predatory development anymore, because as soon as somebody tells us that they want to come and do some development in Medway, immediately there's a set of rules, a set of regulations, a set of expectations that they have to abide by as long as we've got this plan, and that will be very different to the last 20 years. So I'm optimistic. I'm encouraged by the plan. I'm looking forward to hear what the inspector's got to say about it, and indeed to what other people have got to say about it. But I'm very clear that whatever written representations people want to make, they are making written representations about a plan that is ready to go to the inspector. And for that, I think we can all be grateful, breathe a sigh of relief, and hope that the inspector is as diligent as you and all of our teams have been in making sure that we get the best out of this for Medway.
Thank you very much indeed, Teresa. Harinder.
Thank you, Vince. I'm not going to sort of talk about sort of the local plan and what it's included in it. Actually, I think I couldn't do what Simon just did and couldn't do it any better. I certainly couldn't. And the only thing I want to sort of mention is that there's two things. Firstly, I think with the officers that we have, we've been incredibly lucky to have the set of officers that we currently have working on the local plan. And then the second thing is I genuinely do not believe that we would be where we are with the local plan on the precipice if it wasn't for Councillor Curry. It's probably been said in other ways, and other people have mentioned it, but I really, really do want to stress, I don't think there is anyone else in the council that could have navigated the various sets of challenges, guided and aided with the officers that we have, to have got us to this point. We've had a number of abortive attempts to get to this point, and we haven't really reached been as successful or have done a thorough job as the team led by Councillor Curry and have managed to get to. Like I said, I'm not even going to attempt to explain the various bits of the local plan because Councillor Curry has already done so. So I just want to pay tribute to all the hard work that he's put in and all the hard work that the officers have put in to get it to this point, because it is probably, you know, there is, you mentioned the two plans, Councillor Curry, you mentioned the one Medway plan, but I do believe this as a policy document is the most important plan that we will produce, and it will have meaningful, long-lasting effects. So thank you so much for all the efforts from both for the team and also yourself.
Thank you very much, Harinder. I can't see anybody else, so before I come back to Simon, firstly, I agree with everything that Harinder has just said. This is a complex, difficult, challenging situation if you were doing it in a normal timescale at a council that had one in a relatively recent timescale. We are more than 22 years since our last local plan was passed. And we, as Harinder rightfully says, this is not because there haven't been attempts at different stages, but the ability for our hard-working officers under your political leadership, Simon, and you, I know you will be the first to say it's a team effort, but teams need leaders, has been outstanding to get us to this point in just over 2 years since that other historic day in Medway just over 2 years ago. Is remarkable. And we'll say more about that obviously later on in June on the 26th. I think for me tonight, I would say a couple of things before I hand back to you as well. Firstly, of course, everyone focuses on that figure. It's worth saying that figure has reduced under a Labour government. So that's interesting to note. But whether it's people who have listened to the podcast, and we know the brilliant comms team have got thousands of people listening to that podcast, whether it's been the voices from the community, whether it's been yourself and Dave Harris and whoever else, it's really clear that this local plan is about all aspects of Medway. If you're worried about green spaces, this is your local plan. If you're worried about where your kids and grandkids are going to go to school, this is your local plan. If you're worried about where they might be working in the future, this is your local plan. If you're worried about your high streets and town centres, this is your local plan. If you're worried about that 30-year-old, that 40-year-old moving out from their parents' house, this is your local plan. So, look, Simon, huge congratulations to where we've got to so far. To use that, this has been a thing I've said a lot recently. Lots of people say this all the time. the hard work starts now, really. And just the final thing before I hand back to you, there will be some who will say, well, what's the point? You know, LGR's just over there somewhere. Why are you even bothering with this? Government's been very clear in their letters to us most recently that absolutely the new council will be working with existing local plans. So whatever new council we have, we've got even more of a duty, not only to the residents here today, but the residents moving forward, to make sure that our 285,000 residents have their local plan as part of that new unitary authority for North Kent. So absolutely, that makes it more of an urgency, more of a priority than even perhaps this time last year. Simon, back to you.
Thanks very much, Vincent. Thank you to my colleagues for the very kind words about the work that's been done. I will say this has been a team effort, definitely. Huge team. Everybody from, so Bhupinder's with his kind, gentle words about legal processes involved and stuff like that, right through to Teresa and her passion for the health and well-being side of things. And very much, this is a listening plan. Definitely. This is a principle that yourself, Vince, established when we took control 2 years ago, was that this is a community-based plan. This is what we want to do. We want to be out there in the community listening. I think we've carried out more consultations than any other authority in the history of local government, probably, to get to where we are in so many areas, and that's because we're a listening authority. And that's what this plan's about. You know, meeting with the people who live on the river, meeting with the Gypsy Traveller owner representatives and getting their views involved, getting to know the people in the parishes and what they feel about all that kind of, it's actually not work really, it's kind of fun to do because it's going out and meeting and talking and hearing people's views and concerns. And like I said before, this is about, you know, thinking about the history of Medway, the past and what it's all meant, going right back in time to the dockyard days and before then, but also what is our future, what is the next generation expecting of us as the leadership now to give them for the next generation, and that's so important. So just a huge thanks again to everyone. There are some major issues which we're going to have to face. I think I would probably put transport at the top of those, how we deal with the traffic volumes. The population of Medway in this plan will increase by about 50,000 people. Those are the figures that we're looking at. And we do not want all those people jammed on Medway streets in their cars. We need to deal with public transport. And we're doing that right now in different ways. We also have to cope with the Lower Thames crossing and the implications of that. So there are some massive issues and challenges, but this plan gives us the opportunity to tackle them. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Are the recommendations towards full council agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Look forward very much to the special full council. And again, thanks to officers for facilitating that accordingly. Let's move on to, I was going to say it's an important report, but I'm going to say not quite as important as the last report, respectfully to the Medway Housing Delivery Test Action Plan. But Simon, this also sits with you.
Apologies while I just find the right page to get to. So this is about, this is a requirement that we have to do based upon the delivery of new homes in Medway every year. So at the moment, as I mentioned in the previous report, we're supposed to be delivering around about just over 1,600 homes per year to achieve the government targets that we have. We're not actually doing that. We're achieving around about 70% of these. That means that we have to produce an action plan on how we are expected to do that every year in order to sort of satisfy the government that we're doing the best we can in order to achieve that. There's figures of, I think we have to, if we hit 85% of our target, then we don't have to do a plan anymore. But in addition to that, they do tack on an extra 20% as well. I can't get my head around that, but they do, in order to giving us a higher figure to achieve. What we've actually been doing in Medway is delivering record numbers. We've never delivered so many homes before in Medway up until the last few years. So it's actually quite an achievement to get to where we are at the moment. And also our action plan highlights, and this is what it's there for, is the problems that we face in achieving these targets. Delivery rates are affected by so many factors. Firstly and foremost, the nature of the site where the building is taking place. We are trying to build on as many brownfield sites as possible because that's brownfield first is our policy, and that makes it difficult for developers. Every brownfield site is unique and has lots of challenges associated for that. So there are measures that they have to take to do that. We have to face the current housing market, and that fluctuates almost monthly. There are different demands on there. But is it almost the basic stuff, the availability of materials and the workforce and stuff like that. So, for example, with the brownfield sites, we've been a lot of development going on in the centre of Chatham, if you know, people are aware of that. Those sites, I mean, they're actually demolishing the old Go Outdoors is going down as we speak. Now, the developer for that site is costing them a fortune just to do that work and then bring forward the new development. And then on top of that, selling the units that come forward, they have to see their viability. And that's a challenge for them, but it's a challenge they've accepted, and we're working closely with them to try and achieve that aim. So it's a very difficult thing, housing delivery, and it's made more complicated if we've got speculative development going on, particularly on greenfield sites, because it's so much cheaper and easier for developers to build on those. So that makes it more complicated as well. And going back to why the local plan is so important. Having the local plan gives us that certainty, and it takes away this need to have this action plan, because the local plan has a timetable, it has a delivery targets, it does all that, and it gives the developers surety about what they're investing in Medway. That's the thing. It's about the economic surety for developers in terms of, is it worth investing in Medway? Will we get planning permission? Will we have to fight a public inquiry? Well, the answer is no, if we've got a local plan and they can know that they can invest in our community. So that's why the local plan is so important. So basically this is a requirement that we have to deliver, and we are doing it, and this is the programme for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. I can't see any other colleague. I think you've given a very comprehensive overview there, and again, it's obviously not least because of the report beforehand. There's clearly a link between those two, and we want to see good quality developments coming forward. We want to see the housing crisis tackled, and you know, I am fully supportive of Angela Rayner's ambitions and targets around 1.5 million houses, and Medway should be playing their part, and we're ready to. But absolutely, that needs good developers to come forward, to work with the council, not work against us, which has happened from time to time. And certainly having that local plan, as we talked about in the previous agenda item, will do that. So if there's nobody else, I'll come back to you, Simon, for any final comments before we move to the vote.
No, nothing else to add on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the recommendation agreed? Thank you. Let's then move on to item 7, which sits with me. In fact, the next few do, so apologies in advance. This is on Cabinet Advisory Groups. Of course, this is the first Cabinet meeting since the annual council, so we are obliged to go through this process. Colleagues will recall when we took control of the council a couple of years back, there were a large number of Cabinet Advisory Groups. People will have their own conclusions as to why that may have been. We reduced that down to 2, and you will recall earlier this year we reduced that down to 1. And for the avoidance of doubt, because I had a question about this just from somebody recently, the Town Centres Board continues to be a very proactive, positive board. I'm really proud to chair that. That has Cabinet members on it. We have a ward councillor from each of the 5 town centres. And indeed, at the last Town Centres Board, we were really pleased to welcome chairs of the town centre forums or equivalent. They're slightly different in some of the towns. So it was really good to have that direct conversation with those individuals. That work doesn't need to be a Cabinet Advisory group, but it is an absolute priority. One of our 5 pledges before the elections was around town centres, so we're continuing that work. However, I am really pleased that we continue to have Corporate Parenting Board as a Cabinet Advisory group. I think firstly, it's the right thing to do anyway, but secondly, of course, in light of our ongoing progress with our Ofsted rating and our services for children, of course, recognising our most recent published letter just earlier this week, and I thank officers and indeed particularly Councillor Price and Councillor Coombs, Adam and Tracy, for their work on every day, making sure that children matter in Medway. And yes, there were some helpful challenges within that letter, but clearly some signs of good progress as well. And of course, we cared passionately about 63,000 children. We care even slightly more about those who we look after every single day. And that's ultimately what the Corporate Parenting Board is looking at. So my personal thanks to both the members and the substitute members. It's one of these boards which rightfully has named substitutes. So my thanks to those who carry out that work, both from our group and the two other main groups. And long may that work continue. So I'll pause at that point. Anybody wish to come in on Corporate Parenting Board at this point? Adam, please.
Yes, just to welcome the fact that corporate parenting is being put firm and centre in terms of where we're doing it, and with a direct line into the cabinet. Basically, that number, that lower number, which you alluded to, is the number that we care especially about, and I would liken it to the fact that everybody likes to do what they can and more for their own children, but the 59 councillors that we have here, it's our duty to do that to our looked after children. So to obviously make sure they get the education and housing, etc. But any of the extra things which are needed, because they haven't got their own parents, but they have got us. They've got brilliant foster carers, they've got brilliant social workers looking after them, youth service, etc. But we are the corporate parents, and this is why it's important that we actually have that as a direct subgroup of this cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other member. Before we move to the vote, I also want to place on record, actually, I don't think we've mentioned them enough, really. Young Lives Foundation do a tremendous job of being, strong advocates, strong supporters, both of us as a council, but most importantly for those young people. So I'd want to say a huge thanks to the team there. And I know a couple of their volunteers have been recognised at various Kent and Medway awards over the last couple of years, rightfully so. They continue to do a good job. Therefore, are colleagues happy to agree the recommendation?
Agree.
Thank you. Let's then move on to the next item, which is on the financial improvement and transformation plan, known as the FIT plan. This is both the round 4 monitoring and the full year outturn. It's worth saying that there has been a lot in the press in recent days around how councils manage financial difficulties, how councils challenge itself to make sure we're doing everything we can. I'm incredibly proud as leader of this council that we took the decision proactively to bring in CITFA, to work with them. As colleagues know, that first report pulled no punches. That first sentence, Medway Council's finances are in a grave position. I will never forget that sentence. But we've worked with them. We've worked collaboratively and collectively as a team of 25. We've not had orders barked from cabinet members. We've worked collaboratively because that's how we get the best outcomes for our residents. And then we've invited CITFA back in for a second report, which shows, yes, there's more to do, but that independent sector expert, not a friend of mine, not some bloke I found on the internet. This is a real life issue with real life people dealing with our finances to make sure that we can deliver the very best services every single day to the people of Medway. And so that second CITFA report shows, again, work going on every single day, cabinet members working closely with their senior officers and making sure that we hold each other to account. Critically important. So I'm incredibly proud of us not only doing those two pieces of work with CITFA, making sure that they are giving us that independent, informed, sector-led approach to making sure that we are making the best and right, sometimes very challenging financial decisions, that we're doing it very transparently. Nobody forced us to publish both of those reports from CITFA. We proactively chose to. Nobody forces us to bring this report to Cabinet, but we choose to, because we are open and transparent. This is what a good upper tier authority administration looks like. So I'm incredibly proud of the work we've done. Colleagues would have seen through the conversations, I know every single one of the cabinet members around this table and those who aren't here tonight, the individual conversations that have led to bringing forward some remarkable savings. You know, if you think about the service delivery that we've continued to get, you know, those very strong independent external inspections we've had, things like that, where again we're being held to account. Whilst this process is ongoing, to me that says this is a council who have grasped the unenviable nettle of dealing with financial responsibility when we had a government which couldn't care less, regardless of who was running this place, frankly, about local government finance. So, colleagues, you've been through these individual conversations. I don't need to rehearse those tonight. And for those who are interested, again, we've been very open and transparent on the journey, and I'm very pleased. There's always more to do. You know, we are not complacent, and people know that. But I'm very clear that we've made very good progress, and we continue to do that. You know, well over 90% achieved on the savings targets, the challenging savings targets that we had. So I'm very pleased to move this, both as a Q4, but also the full year outturn. We will continue to have that oversight. You know, the third recommendation is very, very clear. We'll continue to deal with the residuals, which move into the next financial year. Just today, we started the conversation in one of the directorates about next year's budget. That's how forward-thinking we are. So while others might want to cancel meetings and others might want to bring in those who are not elected and have no experience of local government finance, we're getting on with the job here, and I'm very proud of every single member of my cabinet and every single member of, Richard, your corporate management team who are working every single day to deliver outstanding services, but with value for money at the heart of it. Teresa.
Yes, thank you, Vince, and thank you for your leadership on the finance portfolio. What this report shows is that you don't need Doge. Just down the road, a sort of Kevin and Perry tribute act has landed. There's a gentleman with a baseball cap and a mobile phone wandering about the place at KCC who is apparently going to sort out their finances. All he needs to do is have a look at the website, because actually, like all councils, their finances, and that's one of the things about local government, even before we came to Medway, it was one of the most scrutinised publicly areas of public services. And what we have done is joined with everybody to make that a transparent, supportive process through the FIT plan. And it's changed the way that people do things. And I'm every day filled with awe in the way that staff, certainly in the division that I take care for, have responded to this. You can see for yourself that £6.8 million worth of savings has been made in adult social care. The people doing that are working with people who haven't stopped coming through the door. They keep coming through the door every day, more and more of them. But it's a really good example of how Invest to Save works. We put some money into the division, we right-sized it. There are heads of service there now who weren't there before, who are capable and enthusiastic and supportive of Leanne and her teams, and able to make decisions and keep much tighter control. By having enough people to do the job, you can actually achieve quite a lot of savings without any detriment at all to the services that people receive. And staff's enthusiasm for embracing new technology, for thinking about new ways of working, for doing things differently, and learning how to keep financial control has really been something to be very, very proud of, and has added to the greater good of the council, to the greater good of the country. So Doge isn't needed here. What you need are real people, respected experts and professionals doing the job and being given by us the respect and support and wages that they deserve to actually do that job and take care of all the people in Medway. And another example, I think, of the FIT plan is the way that we've been able, as a senior team of 25, to get the different parts of the council working together well. There are better relationships, with finance between everybody. The things that we're doing in adult social care to save money wouldn't happen if people in public health were not helping with the prevention of poor health agenda, putting on free classes, attending events, encouraging people to make sure, on actually a relatively very small budget, encouraging people to take better care of themselves, getting involved in research, national research, international research, putting those ideas into practice all of the time, and sharing those ideas across the council, so that we've had our teams coming together and thinking about how people in the regeneration directorate, in the police directorate, can work with colleagues in the people directorate to deliver better services. That's enthusiasm, that's professionalism, that's transparency. It was there, but I think what we've been able to do is nurture and nourish it. And that's how the FIT plan has started to show savings, and we've started to do new things that weren't happening before, that enhanced not just the reputation of the council, but the kind of professionalism of the staff, and most especially then the services to all the people. So I'm very, very, very pleased to see this report. It's simple, it's easy to understand, even for people with a baseball cap, a mobile phone, and a proud record of failure, apparently. If you read that particular CV, or if you can be bothered to, it actually is something that everybody can take on board, learn from, continue to do, and I think that we're going from strength to strength on this issue.
Thank you very much indeed, Teresa. Simon, and then Alex.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm picking up a lot of what Teresa is saying in agreements. This is about achieving something like this that we've done here is about trust, and it's about collaboration. I'm looking at paragraph 5.4. 87% of the target has been achieved. I mean, that's an amazing piece of work, and there's no hiding that it's been done because we've close working relationships have been developed over the last couple of years, a matter of trust and understanding. The professionalism is always in there, and the expertise is always there to trust and rely upon between us, and that's where we are now. That team of 25 has worked, and this FIT plan is working, and you can see that. As opposed to threats and aggressive behaviour and building barriers. I mean, who goes into local government work expecting to have their job threatened the following week because of some change in political? That's not what you go into local government because you care about your community and the people in it. We wouldn't do it if you didn't care, and that's what we're about. And suddenly, that's not the case in certain parts of the country now, which is really sad to see. But here in Medway, I like to think we've got that sense of trust between us, and we certainly, if there are any gaps in that, we're open to hearing it and wanting to build it and make it better. And the outcome is there to see in 87% of the total of the target being achieved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Alex.
Apologies for any additional echo in the St George's Centre, but I have to agree with Simon and Teresa's analysis of what has been achieved here and the stark contrast with what is happening at the bottom of Bluebell Hill. And I think that there's a real concern that if your starting point is a closed mind, that you can only ever achieve small results. And that's certainly not what has happened here. If your starting point is that people are on the make, that people are swinging the lead, that people are trying to do a bad job or trying to fiddle the books, well, I think that says a lot more about some of the dodgy businessmen at the heart of Reform Party UK Limited and the way that their modus operandi has been through their professional lives than about the conduct of thousands of hard-working public sector employees. I've not met a single officer at Medway Council or indeed at any other council who's wanted to do anything other than a good job and provide value for money, to do more for less, to think smarter. And, you know, I know we're reserving our ire for the clowns who appear to have taken over and turned County Hall into a bit of a circus this week. But we also have to contrast this with the suggested approach at alternative budget proposals from our own opposition in Medway. And the short-termism, the fundamental belief that the purpose of efficiencies is to cut headcount rather than deliver better services for residents. I don't think it would be much comfort to someone receiving a poorer service at from Medway Council or from KCC to say, but we saved 38, we drew a red line through the names of 38 employees arbitrarily based on nothing other than a hunch, a sort of misguided belief, indeed a sort of a dislike, a fundamental dislike or jealousy of public sector employees. These are the people that we rely on for all the services that we really couldn't do without. And I think we owe them not only a debt of gratitude, but we owe them the thoughtfulness which has gone into a report like this, a plan like this, the conduct with SIPFA, rather than what appears to be a sort of very base response, a sort of the intellectual analysis of the sort of comments section of a particularly ill-informed Facebook group and turning that into local government policy. It's no way to make policy. It's no way to deliver efficiencies. And when the fundamental purpose of those efficiencies is based on a false premise, you're doomed to disaster. This, on the other hand, shows that Medway Council has done its homework. As members, as officers, we've read the papers. We're not expecting somebody else to read them for us. We're not going on local politics programmes and admitting that we're convinced that the budget needs to be torn up and started again without ever having read it and with the expectation that someone else is going to do the hard yards for you. That's not what bringing in SIPFA was about. It was about working in partnership and working with experts, as you say, Vince, not with dodgy mates trousering contracts, after a quick chat at next to the smoking shelter. That's not the way we conduct business here, and I think the results of this report and the progress made and the ambition to do more speaks for itself. Medway is getting on with the job while the circus continues at County Hall. It's an embarrassment. They should be embarrassed, but they would have to have some sense of shame to be embarrassed by it, and sadly I don't think that exists.
Thank you. I didn't see any other colleagues, so let me say just 2 or 3 things before we move to the vote. I agree with everything that all of my colleagues have said, unsurprisingly. And let me take an opportunity as finance portfolio holder to say a huge thank you to the finance team led by Phil and Katie in particular, and all of their team who I know have made this process. Teresa is absolutely right. This has been a genuinely collaborative process, and we saw that again this morning in that meeting I spoke about in my opening remarks. So a proper One Medway approach, a proper approach of recognising as politicians we've had to make, and we will probably still have to make, some difficult decisions. Not decisions we got into local government and got into politics to do, but the right thing to do because we're financially responsible. And that sometimes, as you so eloquently put actually in your answer to public questions earlier, that is sometimes about income generation rather than cutting services. And we saw that from at least the main opposition with their very simplified approach of just going, that equals that amount of people, therefore we'll cut that. And we know, and I've been really proud to share this when I've been on BBC recently, that actually things like Magic Notes doing an incredible job and saving time so that those professionals can do 2 things. They can have more time to do the day job rather than admin, and even more importantly than that, they can spend that time and that interaction in a far more professional way, being able to give things like proper eye contact, using their professional judgment, which is what we want from those experts who are looking after our most vulnerable people. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done. I want to place on record my thanks to SIPFA, particularly the officers. We've had 1 or 2 officers who have been through this whole journey with us. And the final thing I'd say before I move to the vote is this. Look, I send my sympathy to Kent County Council staff. They've been treated appallingly in the last 48 hours, sending out a letter two of whom who signed that letter have nothing to do with Kent County Council. Disgraceful. Keir Starmer and Ellie Reeves are never going to write to Medway Council. Let me tell you that now. Because it's not their job, frankly. And the language in that letter is a disgrace. It's a disgrace to local government. So, and whoever that letter had come from, whichever political party, we'd call it out. Because it's our neighbours. And if your neighbour's doing something bad, you call it out. So let me say this. Whilst Reform UK Limited PLC are sending letters threatening staff, the only letter that staff in Medway Council will get from me this week is to say, come along to a session with me and Richard Hicks, your Chief Executive, ask us questions directly. We're open, we're transparent, we want to work with you, we respect you, we value you, and it's down to the hard-working staff of Medway Council, ultimately, who have delivered the savings and the service improvement and transformation that we see at this year end for the FIT plan. Thank you very much, everybody. Are the recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Let's move on to item 9, the Council Plan Performance Monitoring Report and Strategic Risk Summary for Quarter 4. I'll move the recommendations as laid out in paragraph 1. Of course, this continues to go through its processes. This will start going to scrutiny just next week, actually. And thankfully, it's a relatively short timescale. This can be a challenge, and some of us know this, having sat on scrutiny before we had the privilege of sitting here, that sometimes there can be a long lag. Actually, the timings for this particular quarter are pretty short. So that's good, and I look forward, of course, as always, to hearing what our friends on Overview and Scrutiny have to say. We're in a position where, by the nature of these 82 different measures, some of which we're doing very well and exceeding on, some are more challenging, we recognise that, and again, individual portfolio holders may wish to comment on those as appropriate. But again, from my perspective, I think we are in a good place as we move towards effectively the end of the first full year of the new council plan, something which I'm proud that we moved this time last year effectively, came into place, and it's working well. And for me, it's about having targets which are challenging where appropriate, but absolutely for us to be held to account to as well. So I'll move the recommendations as laid out. The risk summary is as per written. I don't wish to comment on that particularly at this stage. Any questions or comments? I'll take Tracy first and then Simon.
Thank you very much. I find it so useful to look at the progress we are making towards our One Medway plan and to see the detailed analysis of what's been going on. I'm just looking in particular at the target for benefiting from good education, quality jobs and a growing economy. Out of 17 performance indicators, 58.8% have met or exceeded targets, with a further 17.6% less than 5% below target, a really good indicator. But the really important thing are the detailed notes that go under every single aspect of this plan. It shows we've got really good understanding both of where we're doing well and why we're doing well, but actually a really accurate self-assessment for those areas where we do need to improve on. It shows that we've identified what the issues are and also sets out steps that will be taken to make those improvements going forward. So I feel that this is such a useful tool. It's a really good indicator that we know where we are, we know what we've got to do to improve, that we're accurately assessing our performance in so many different areas. So I find this a really useful tool. Yet another example of Medway Council being open and accountable to the public as well, that this is all available for them to see exactly where we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Simon.
Yeah, I was going to almost say exactly the same thing. Thanks, Tracy. I think that I just wanted to reflect on probably just the summary of performance indicators, showing that we are doing a huge amount of green stuff, the positives, 50%, but there's no hiding where we need to do better. And that's about the openness and the collaboration, that we all share this data, we look at it from every aspect and every way, and we know the areas. Nobody's hiding anything in this, even from the public of Medway who can read this as well. This is what we've achieved. This is where we're doing really well, and this is where we're not doing as well as we think we should be, and we need to improve. And we're not going to shy away from getting that done. So I think this is a brilliant way of presenting the work that we're doing, and it really is clear and concise and understandable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Teresa.
Just a few highlights, really. From me, I really like the format of this plan. And as you've said, Tracy, the notes underneath each one really illuminate what's happening, but do that in a very easy-to-read way. So first of all, we've seen some really good results in adult social care, giving older people greater control over their daily lives, keeping them fitter, keeping them healthy, managing to ensure that they have a say in what their future is and maintaining their independence. Those indicators are going really well, and they're not just easily won. As I said on the last item, that's a collective effort, actually, right across the council. And I know that if Nina was here, she would be saying that all of the staff who work in culture and in regeneration are contributing to that as well, helping to enrich people's lives. And we've seen some fantastic satisfaction rates, actually, from the libraries and hubs where lots of new things have been going on, like the repair cafes, scones and music events, short plays, lots and lots of different things, actually, not just borrowing books, well, that will always be important, but being able to use those hubs as centres of sort of cultural regeneration where people can share things and have new experiences at very low cost and feel that they're welcome into those spaces, that they're not, restricted spaces where you have to sort of struggle about in silence, borrow a book and go home again. On the contrary, they've become lively and active and are growing. And of course, being able to take part in something like that contributes to all of the things that I'm worried about every day, and that is keeping people well, maintaining their independence, making sure that people are not socially isolated. So I think the plan's a really good way of showing the interconnections across the council, including with all of the things we're trying to achieve for public transport, active travel, within our green spaces. This is about the well-being of people in Medway, not just when you're vulnerable, not just when you need something, but so that you can enjoy your life. And we've got lots of teams dedicated to doing that, and everybody who is vulnerable and does need our support can benefit along the way. So I think it's something that gives us, as Tracy has just said, a really good spot check, very quickly achieved on where we've got to, where we need to do more, and what impact that all those things are having on the people that we represent. So, yeah, I'm really pleased with the plan and glad that we've got it into a format that makes it accessible to everybody.
Thank you very much. I can't see anybody else, so thank you for those comments. And I would wholeheartedly agree. I think, to be fair to the previous administration, which I will be for one sentence, they had started to make some progress on this. So some of the narrative reports, particularly in the last couple of years before the election, had got better, but they're in a different state now. So actually, to use the phrase from here, there was a direction of travel and the trend was upwards, but it's dramatically increased over the last couple of years. And similarly, again, we haven't particularly talked about the risk area tonight because there's no change. That's why I haven't spoken about it particularly. But again, in a really similar vein, actually, the narrative there for those who are interested in that particular area of the council's work, really simple and straightforward for anyone to pick up and engage and understand why, when we do make changes, why we're doing that, and in particular why perhaps things have the inherent risk score that they do. So huge thanks to the team that produces these long reports, but good reports, because ultimately we want to be transparent about our 80 KPIs. So on that basis, are people happy to accept the recommendations? Yeah, I do. Thank you. Let's then move on to item 10, the Capital and Revenue Outturn and Annual Debt Write-Off Report 24-25. I'll move recommendations 1.1 to 1.5. And I'll say a few things on this briefly, and then I'll throw it open to other colleagues for this. Obviously, the outturn is the outturn, and we spoke a little bit about this during the FIT plan. So again, obviously, the numbers are the same. But actually, from the perspective here, there's a bit of additional tidying up, and this continues to be an ongoing process for this administration. You know, some things have been in place and hadn't been changed for a couple of decades, actually. So it's good, and this is an iterative process, and we see some of this tonight. In recommendation 1.2, what we're doing there is stuff that was originally earmarked through flexible use of capital receipts, going back into the general capital receipts. The balances there going back into that. Perfectly sensible if they haven't been used appropriately. That we will recommend to Council the removal of the 34.1 million from the Innovation Park Medway scheme as set out originally from the report we took back in March. And then probably 1.4 and 1.5, just for some clarity. So obviously, not obviously, but we took a report, the previous administration took a report, which had a capital programme, which was effectively the main job for that capital programme was buying the Pentagon. So that gives you an idea and timescale as to when that capital programme was agreed. For the avoidance of doubt, this Labour group and the oppositions we were at the time, we were always principally supportive of that. We thought that perhaps a few more quotations, you know, I think we took more quotations for the price of a photocopier than we did for the price of a shopping centre, but the administration regrettably didn't take our advice on that. But we were supportive of the principle, and again, that is, to be fair, again to the previous administration, twice in a day, that's it, no more. The reason is the same reason we would have done. I think if we were given the same opportunity at that point, and it's around control. What we don't want is a developer or somebody else who isn't us controlling that prime location in the middle of Chatham. So supportive of the principle. The capital scheme that was agreed, the Pentagon Future Capital Works scheme, originally bought the Pentagon, did some works on the Pentagon, was also used for the securing Mountbatten House, and that left us with a figure of around £2.8 million approximately, of which we're now allocating £2.4 million of the allocated borrowing capacity for the works laid out in item 1.4, and more detail of that is in section 12.3 of the report, but in the recommendations. And then that we will remove the remaining capacity of 400,000 for borrowing, again, as laid out in section 12.3. So I think that's a sensible approach. You don't want to have capital programmes which are just hanging around for the sake of it. I thank Phil and the team in particular for, again, this ongoing tidying up. I think it's the right thing to do anyway, but actually with half an eye on LGR, it's the right thing to do with that in mind as well, but we should be doing this anyway. So I'm happy to move those recommendations. We spoke a lot during the FIT plan around the outcomes that we've had for our finances, so I don't intend on going into that in too much more. The reports are there for people to see. And again, the work that's been done to bring the balances to where they should have been, both with the savings requirements, etc., are there. And again, colleagues may wish to comment on their individual portfolios. I'll leave it at that point, see if anybody wishes to contribute accordingly. Harinder.
Thank you, Vince. And as you said, with the previous administration, of course, we were supportive of the principle, would have liked a closer look, a bit more scrutiny about what the deal was and how we got to the deal in the first place. However, that's now done. The important thing is to recognise is that it's now on our books and it is our responsibility and it's our investment, and it's already starting to pay back that investment in terms of, if you look at SEND, if you look at the Healthy Living Centre, etc., and all the other stuff that we're working on it. So with regards to the use of this money when it comes to repair and looking at sort of the spend that we can use to protect our investment, I'm fully in support of it. It's prudent. It means that it keeps the upkeep to what it needs to be. But like I said, it was supportive of the principle, but it's prudent to spend an amount of money now so that we don't have to pay anything much, much more later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harinder, and that's a helpful overview of that specific item. Any other colleague? No, if not, I will just say thank you for that contribution. And again, look, as people know, I'm not quite 50 years old, but the Pentagon is, and anybody who's half a century old is going to need some care and attention. So the fact that we are doing this, fundamentally doing this tidying up piece of work will ensure that, you know, that capacity that's already been agreed several years ago can be used to do some more of this ongoing work. And as you rightfully say, Harinder, I wonder if the Labour councillors of 53, 54 years ago, who were there at the debates at the time on the Pentagon, if they could have imagined half a century later, not only is it still there, but also it's being used in a revolutionary way, bringing co-working to the heart of Chatham in a way that other offers are not quite the same. There's other great co-working spaces in Chatham and Medway, but nothing quite like Ascend. And that facility, which is so desperately needed, you know, in this time when, and I know Teresa is incredibly proud of us, as we all are, we start our journey as a Marmot Place. Of course, Marmot Place is about everything else that supports health, but you need good health provision as well. And the James Williams Healthy Living Centre will be at the heart of that. So I'm not sure, you know, sometimes I think about decisions we've taken 50 years on from now, will they still be debating that as well? So that's interesting indeed. So from that perspective, I thank the councillors from 50 years ago for that. I thank all councillors for their work in getting us to the position where we had the outturn we had this year, and I'll therefore move the recommendations as laid out in the report. Are those agreed? Thank you. Happy birthday, Pentagon. I don't think they do a birthday card for shopping centres. Let's move on to the next report, which is with Zoe. So it's not me, hooray for that, for everybody who says under their breath. The Gun Wharf Improvement Programme Annual Report Update.
Okay, as you say, this is an annual update report on all of the activities since the inception of the Gun Wharf Improvement Programme last September. A capital addition for 22 million for the refurbishment was agreed at Cabinet on the 13th of February last year, followed by full council agreement on the 29th of February last year. So, starting from the beginning, in October 2023, reinforced aerated autoclave concrete, I think I've got that round the right way, was identified in the Gun Wharf roof space. And further to government advice and available guidance, areas of Gun Wharf were deemed to be unusable. A programme for dealing with the RAC and an improvement programme for Gun Wharf more broadly was established and has since involved monthly updates reporting to the Corporate Landlord Board. No substantial work to the building has been carried out since its opening in the late 70s, in spite of the fact that we have responsibility for what is a listed building. The refurbishment will involve a redesign of the interior of the building, which will involve a change in working practices, bringing better conditions for staff and other users of the building. And the main priority is safety, along with fitness for purpose now and in the future. Improvements are to be prioritised against an available budget, and the principles are as follows. RAC, health and safety, accessibility to staff and visitors, including level access, disabled, gender and welfare provisions, addressing environmental and carbon savings, including solar and renewables, better functionality of space, including a council chamber and cafe, updating and modernisation with new furnishings and decor. These are aimed to ensure a reflection of council values in terms of equality, diversity and inclusion, and attracting staff into the organisation. In determining the design of the project, forthcoming local government reorganisation has been considered as far as possible. The project has two phases. Phase 1 is the ongoing management of Gun Wharf offices and organising temporary workspaces as required, and of course addressing the RAC, now determined as a lower risk than first considered due to its current state. Phase 2 is to determine the permanent iteration and use of the building and removal of the rack, particularly where its condition is of most risk. And since the rack discovery in October 2023, facilities management have organised working areas with 724 desks, including a hot desking and clear desk policy. The rack within the Ministry of Justice was prioritised for the remedial works, enabling HMCTS services to resume the Medway family courts last November 2024. An interim parking policy has been introduced to ensure fair and efficient use of available spaces at the Brook. Going forwards, we aspire to having some form of art installation to Wharf being investigated. And reopening of the cafe within certain guidance is being looked at with discussions with Medway North, and the FM team are exploring healthy food options alongside that. Phase 2 is the refurbishment and redesign, and this phase aims to make Wharf fully operational, including the rack remediation, governance and decision-making, staff engagement and relocation of the CCTV hub into Wharf. On the rack remediation, Rack Consulting Solutions have been working with the Capital Projects team since April 2024, including 40 panels recently removed for testing by the Building Research Establishment. And a final report from RCS has very recently been received in May, towards the end of May, with options for removal and or remediation will now be considered, including costs and timeline. The remaining budget will inform the scope of refurbishment, and as part of the removal, some roofing repairs will be required. Scaffolding will remain in situ throughout the process. Views from stakeholders, including disabled workers, Medway makers and service managers, will be invited to inform the design, and this will be ongoing, and other local authorities have been looked at for ideas and advice. The REBA 2 report has been issued and covers the concept of a Wharf council chamber, taking into account numbers that might need to be accommodated in the context of local government reorganisation. And this includes aspirations to make space available to local stakeholders. Following finalisation of design concepts, the process will be determined, and the budget going forwards will be dependent on the rack remediation costs. That has to be the priority. The timeline is at Appendix 3 to the report, and risks are set out at Section 5 of the report at pages 93 to 94, and at Section 7, the proposed reduction of our carbon footprint within the process is set out. The total budget for phases 1 and 2 is in the region of £22 million, which includes bringing CCTV into the building, and spend will be monitored throughout the process. Expenditure currently to end of April 2025 so far is £875,000. Contracts for works and services have been procured in line with contract procedure rules, and further detail is set out in pages 96 to 99 of the report. We have aspirations for the new iteration of the building. It's a listed building, and we have responsibility for that as a custodian. We want to be an employer of choice, and so the environment for our staff and visitors is really important, their well-being and inclusivity. We want accessibility by design, and we want to meet our statutory obligations as well. And our aspiration is to get this done by May 2027. We've only just reached RIPA 2, which is still conceptual at this stage, but further reports will be forthcoming.
Thank you very much indeed, Zoe, for that really helpful overview of the annual report. I'll take Teresa first, and then Simon.
Thank you for that report, Zoe, and for the determination that you've shown in getting a schedule, because I think that's been really important to staff. There are not many people who have got RAC to thank for much, but actually I'm one of them. I was very, very pleased when we had a clear opportunity to do something that has been years overdue in that building, and from opposition. I spoke about this many times. It's completely unacceptable to have staff in degraded working circumstances. That building is a listed building, but the people in it are worth more than the listing to me, and they deserve decent conditions of work. And they haven't had those for a long time. It was absolutely, you've said some nice things about the last administration. I'm afraid I will always say that their attitude towards people's working conditions was unforgivable. There was no refurbishment, no replacement budget. Things were held back. People have put up with scruffy old surroundings, ancient furniture, carpet that needed throwing out about 20 years ago, and the general feel of the place has not been welcoming to anybody, actually, and I'm amazed at the way that staff put up with it. I've been equally grateful for the way that they've accommodated all the changes that we've had to make to keep everybody safe because of RAC, all the moving around they've had to do, the different ways of working they've had to embrace, but they have done it. And what we're looking forward to now is a decent modern working environment that can accommodate flexible working, very important, and not at all deleterious to the way that services work. On the contrary, I think people work harder when they have the opportunity to work in a hybrid environment, but they need to meet together, they need to be together, they need to be accessible to one another and to the public. And through this refurbishment, money well spent, we're going to make sure that that happens. So I don't feel that we should defend this. I take no lessons from anybody who say that it's a waste of public money. On the contrary, this is an investment in the public's future. This building belongs to the people of Medway. They will be very welcome there. They will feel when they come and the refurbishment has happened that they are welcome, which is not the case now in the way that the place has been neglected and designed, despite the best efforts of everybody who works there. So I think, Zoe, special thanks to your team, particularly to Sunny E, who was absolutely pivotal in terms of organising the building so that it could keep going and not stay shut for very long. And he's, endured some slings and arrows, including from me, for the work that he did. But he's maintained a lot of enthusiasm. We've got a tight deadline to make this happen, but I know there's determination, Zoe, from you and from everybody else to ensure that it does. And when it does, I think that people in Medway will see a real difference and accept the fact that we want to be an employer of choice, a gold standard employer who look after their staff and by doing so provide the best services we can for the people at Medway.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Simon?
Yeah, thanks very much, Vince, and thank you very much, Zoe, for this. It's brilliant, and it's a testament to the hard work you've put in to get to where we are with this, and it's really starting to look quite brilliant, actually, what's going on there. I think one of the things that strikes me, I endorse what Teresa was saying in terms of the achievement here and what we were faced with when we started the project. It was a big question mark over whether we should do this or not, because it was, and the decision to do it meant a huge amount of work, and the team, Sunny leading them, have grasped the nettle and really gone with it and really achieved or are achieving something as we speak. And the hierarchy of priorities about making it safe, making it accessible, doing the carbon savings and the environmental work, improving the functionality of the building for work and for the public, but also modernisation, which actually mentions new furnishings in there as well. So that's always encouraging to see that. But I think there is a wider picture here as well around the expertise that we've been developing as a council. Medway's got this huge history of buildings. We've got an ancient castle that was built by William the Conqueror, all the way through to the cathedral, and then 1,000 years later we've got this building of Wharf to look at. And throughout all that process, how we manage and maintain our building history and do that is a huge challenge and a very expensive challenge. And having the expertise in-house to do that. So just in the last couple of years, we've been doing a huge amount of work about the centre of Chatham and the work's going on there, and knowledge that's been developed around that. The Pentagon's been mentioned. There's the Cossington Park, a demolition and a rebuild, which took a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge, and we learned a lot from that process, and equally with this now. And we've got colleagues and organisations that we work with, like Mid-Kent College, who've been carrying out similar work on their building. We know the cathedral is doing a lot of work. Only last week, a church over in Rainham was asking for help and advice on retrofitting to make them carbon neutral, and we've got the expertise in-house to give them advice on what to do and where to go because of our own experience of doing this work. So we're actually developing a very expert council in this particular aspect of Medway's community and Medway's life, and it's really welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Before I come back to you, Zoe, I'd say a couple of bits. I would agree with Teresa wholeheartedly on the fact that I often say Medway's for everyone. Medway Council's headquarters should be for everyone as well. And that's not, you know, we've been clear as well, integrated hubs are a key part of that process and that change of how we do things. And so actually making sure that our headquarters is a part of that conversation is critical. There are organisations like the Medway Lotments Federation and the Medway Scouts who regularly held their AGM in Gun Wharf. I'd like them to come to a much nicer, fit-for-purpose Gun Wharf. It's not going to be unlisted because, blimey, that process is tricky and difficult and expensive. Whatever individual views on brutalist architecture, I like it. I know there are other cabinet members who like it. We won't go into that vote now. It's listed and we have to deal with that. And that comes with challenges, but it comes, you know, with opportunities to make sure it's fit for purpose as we move forward. And absolutely, for the avoidance of doubt, that the facilities that we have there, ultimately, we are working hard for the people of Medway. That's what we are tasked to do. Whatever happens with local government reorganisation, the new council will have a tip-top, state-of-the-art building to do with whatever they wish, whether they wish that to be a council headquarters or something else. Ultimately, that will be a decision for the new administration. But as long as we're here and Medway Council continues to exist, we have absolutely got both our staff and our residents at the heart of what we're doing. And this is a prime example of that. So Zoe, thank you for your annual report. Back to you.
Yeah. I think when we first found out about the rack, we thought it was a disaster. And we're now beginning to realise that the situation is looking quite positive and less expensive than was originally anticipated. We can't commit fully on cost yet because there's more testing to do. We expect to know by October, and there are some drone reports being undertaken to look at the state of the roof, where some repairs will be needed to avoid leaks and stop the rack getting wet. So we are still in the discovery phase, but we are very optimistic now about the size of the problem. We'll be going out to procurement in October, and we can update at an appropriate time when we have that further information.
Thank you very much indeed, Zoe. And again, please pass on our thanks to the whole team that are making this happen. Are the recommendations agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Let's move to item 12, which is the Medway Adult Education Annual Accountability Statement. Tracy, over to you.
Thank you very much. As part of its grant agreement, Medway Adult Education is required to submit an annual accountability statement to the Department for Education to ensure good use of public funds. And this statement sets out the expectations of providers in return for the funding provided by the Department for Education. I'd really like to take this opportunity to thank Dan Ratcliffe and the whole Medway Adult Education team who work incredibly hard with actually quite a limited budget. Medway Adult Education have got a huge role to play in skills development, which supports the economic regeneration of Medway, and I'm going to just list a few of the things that they do. They have a strategic partnership with Medway Job Centre Plus. They have an expanded English language offer for speakers of other languages to meet the growing demand in Medway. A apprenticeship provision with a planned increase to ensure that the offer meets demand in consultation with our local employers. Connect to Work, a new key programme supporting people from a variety of disadvantaged groups into work. Increasing family learning with a focus on English and maths, embedding digital skills across their courses, and working with local employers to deliver courses at times which are convenient to them and on their premises where possible. That's just a sample of some of the work that Medway Adult Education carry out. They give huge value for money for the grant that they receive from the DFE. The full accountability statement is in Appendix 1 of the report, and so Cabinet is being asked to consider and approve this statement in order for the grant funding to continue.
Thank you very much indeed, Tracy. I've got Teresa next.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. And look, I think what this report shows is that Medway Adult Education is very good value for money. And under Dan's leadership has gone from strength to strength. Having worked very closely associated in my career with adult education, I'm not sure that there are many adult education services around the country, actually, who offer this level of diversity and direct involvement in lots of other community activity. Our service is very closely involved with helping to reduce social isolation, not just by putting on classes, but by actively getting involved in doing things, like working in the sensory garden together at Eastgate House, and then offering gardening courses to complement that. Putting on a fantastic open day, which is coming up soon, with a barbecue where people can showcase the work that they do and the things that they've achieved, as well as taste and try different classes. So the kind of reach of the adult education service has improved. Their relationships with business have definitely improved. And I had the very great pleasure of going along to the Salvation Army Centre in Chatham, where our adult education service is holding family learning classes based on speakers of other languages. And I really enjoyed my morning with 8 women, each from a different country, coming together, learning English in a really lively class, 6 children present and a play worker as well, all involved in the learning in one way or another, sharing ideas, supporting each other, complete mixed ability, a fantastic example of the diversity of Chatham of and in itself, but a very worthwhile, very heartwarming experience that I enjoyed. And it was lovely to see the teacher, Noreen, knowing her students incredibly well, able to tell me a bit about their personal stories, the journeys that they'd had, the things that had happened to them along the way, and the way that the women themselves had formed their own support network by having a WhatsApp group, keeping in touch with each other, going along to other things. And when I finished at the class, I went down to thank the people in the Salvation Army Centre for hosting the class, and they were telling me that the women in the class come along to lots of the activities that they run as well. So just by being in that building, going to a different place, having that sort of professional mobility, that those people had started to integrate with other members of the community in Chatham, doing different things. We need to do more of that. I'm a little bit disappointed, actually, at the way that the government have funded adult education this year. I think there's some lobbying for us to do. It does deserve more money. It is a very valuable service, and I think locally, if anybody wants to come along and have a look from Bridget Phillipson's department, they're very welcome, because we could, do a lot more with just a bit more money.
Thank you, Teresa. I can't see anybody else, so before I go back to Tracy, I would absolutely wholeheartedly agree. The direction of travel nationally on adult education, I'm slightly nervous about. I think you're absolutely right to say some collective lobbying with our 3 MPs and with us as a cabinet to say, actually, for what a phenomenal example, we should be showing that to Bridget Phillipson and the others across government who want to see a cohesive community being built with comradeship and friendship and education at the heart of it. I mean, blimey, that's an amazing example. And of course, they are not, as a team, shy about coming forward. They are brilliant. Again, as others have mentioned, the Adult Education Open Day, 21st of June, 11 till 3, down at the centre in Rochester. You know, if you wanted to make a hat, if you wanted to do some woodwork, if you wanted to do some screen printing, all of those skills, you know, those traditional skills available, working in partnership with Jasper's, again, a great community cafe. So again, that one Medway approach shouldn't be ever underestimated, and people who attend can also go and enjoy some of our culture with a free entry to Eastgate House as well. So a huge thanks to the team. And of course, adult education is for life, not just for one open day. So my thanks again to the team who do amazing work. And with your leadership, Tracy, I know you've taken a personal interest in trying to support them, advocate for them, particularly as has been said, there's been some challenging financial settlements from central government, so I think we will always advocate for that, and I think that point around lobbying we can take outside to the meeting tonight. Tracy, back to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your comments. You're absolutely right. There will be a challenge coming up with the funding from central government. But we have this accountability statement which is looking at public funds being used correctly, but it's really hard to quantify the contribution that Medway Adult Education make to the wider economy of Medway by upskilling our residents, by allowing them to retrain, by allowing them to move into employment or to change jobs. And I feel that we need to take that longer term view when it comes to funding, that this is an investment in the people of Medway, and it's really important that we do all we can to make sure that the team are able to carry on reaching as many people as they do and doing the good work they do. So thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you. Is the recommendation agreed? Thank you. Then let's move on to item number 13, which is Gateway 1 procurement. Adam, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Vince, and thank you, colleagues. I'm very pleased and proud to move this item 13. Normally, these gateway procurement contracts are to do with like renewing or to go out to tender for an existing pattern of service, etc. This is a new service which is coming in. In the past, if you'd spoken about children's mental health services, people would have heard about CAMS, which is actually a specialist service, but it was one of the only services which existed and consequently was coming under pressure for all sorts of needs. This this launching of the Medway Therapeutic Alliance, procurement, is asking Cabinet to approve that. There's been a lot of work that's gone into it. I'd like to thank public health colleagues, David Whiting, my colleague councillor like Theresa Murray, Hannah Christie, Ailish Gildenholz, and other colleagues that have been working very in a very thorough manner to actually come up with this. It's going to be a long contract. It's going to be 60 months in the first instance, with some options for moving forward to a further 36 months. It's being recommended to you that we go for the option 5, which is by way of competition for elements of that, because it's going to be a wide spread of the economy involving the voluntary sector as well. The gap basically has been that we haven't had enough to offer for our children and young people, 5 to 18-year-olds, going up to 25 years for those who are care leavers and with special needs who are in treatment or awaiting treatment. We actually haven't had enough in terms of providing short-term evidence-based interventions for mild to moderate emotional well-being needs for those people, but we are going to be getting this. It's been happening over a period of time, but it's now being institutionalised, and it's using existing pots of money, and it's a combination of Medway Council's an amount of about 400,000, but added to the Medway share of the pooled budget from the ICB, and it's with pleasure that I recommend that we move ahead. We're not in the position yet to move forward on the specialist element of the mental health collaborative or the education one, but this is the one for the Therapeutic Alliance, and you know, we're going to be hearing more about this, but it's going to be opening it up to essentially what it says, an alliance made of many different services, including the voluntary sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. We've got Teresa and then Tracy.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. And you're absolutely right to point out that this is not just an alliance, it's a collaboration. And I think it actually represents a piece of real innovation in this field, one that we can build on, and we've even had discussions already about putting together something like this for adults. Because these interventions, before specialist interventions take place, are critical. Not only do they help maintain people along the journey, if they've got mental health problems, but they can actually lead to a situation where somebody doesn't need the specialist intervention in the end, because the problems that have been experienced can be dealt with in this therapeutic way, and do so far more quickly. So I think this is going to take a huge amount of pressure off families with children who have got mental health issues. It's going to enable all the practitioners involved to distinguish between whether somebody will benefit from therapeutic interventions or whether they, need more specialist help more quickly. So it's going to help the CAM service with the people that they've got waiting, and actually can start off in a very individualised way, which specialist interventions can't always afford to do that. They very often start with group work, and I think from an integrated partnership point of view, this really is one of the first things that we have done that is new and has been possible because we've been able to pool budgets. And I think that so I do thank the colleagues at the ICB for being able to help us with this. And it brings actually into very sharp focus the fact that if we didn't have a Kent and Medway single geographic area ICB, things like this would be much more difficult to achieve, because when you're going across geographical boundaries and trying to achieve a therapeutic alliance, that I think would be a much more complicated picture. This has come into place really quite quickly, given the complexity of both the people that it's seeking to help and the number of organisations that do need to be involved. And I do thank Ailish for the determination that she's shown in making this happen, because in order to make it happen and commission effectively and for a long period of time, so it's got a real chance of being able to show the impact and analyse it over a sustainable period of time. A huge amount of work and sort of partnership working and dealing with all sorts of organisations has gone into this. So the ICB are undergoing changes at the moment, but they've been able to join with us in this, and commensurately, we support them as they make presentations to government in wanting to maintain that single geographical area, so that whatever the shape of the new council, we can mirror the place-based functions as we design the local government reform in a way that isn't to anybody's detriment and holds the important partnerships that we've got now together.
Thank you very much, Teresa, and I wholeheartedly agree, particularly around that coterminosity, critically important. Tracy, please.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to see this coming forward. The early intervention and the preventative element of this will make such a difference. It will stop people reaching crisis point, which will have an ongoing impact in terms of school attendance and long-term outcomes for children and young people. Social, emotional and mental health needs have increased greatly. Schools are doing a really good job under a great deal of pressure, I must say, to manage this, and this will mean that children are accessing that support earlier and that their needs are being met sooner, which will mean that they will be able to cope much better, and schools will hopefully manage that load much more easily. So I think that for long-term view, this is going to be a massive boon. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tracy. I agree with all of those comments as well. Adam, back to you.
Yes, thank you, colleagues. Thank you, like Teresa, for talking from the public health point of view, and from my colleague Tracy Coombs from the family and schools-like point of view. Definitely, I mean, we saw during COVID as well that there was literally a whole part of the generation of our young people were thrown into social isolation, etc. By having this access to short-term based interventions earlier, it's going to nip in the bud some of these mental health difficulties which are arising, and it's going to enable our younger people to get back on track sooner, rather than having to be excluded, etc., all the rest of it. So I'm very excited about it, and I commend this report to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. Is the recommendation agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. That moves us on to the last substantive item for tonight. No one's given indication they wish to raise anything on the blue papers, so I'm presuming we're not looking to go into closed session. And on that basis, I'll hand over to Zoe.
Thank you. This item is about the future of Northbank House in Sir Thomas Longley Road. And the report seeks delegated authority for the Director of Place to either vary or take surrender of the existing lease and supplemental agreement in respect to the property, and to grant a new lease and any necessary supplemental agreements for the best consideration reasonably obtainable, or to grant a new reversionary lease and any necessary supplemental agreements which will commence when the existing lease expires for the best consideration reasonably obtainable. The purpose is to help the tenant of the property, IPS International Limited, to secure its future and to make the property more attractive to potential purchasers. The rent value exceeds £100,000 per annum, so is a matter for Cabinet. And the background of this property is set out in section 4 of the report, page 292. The current lease expires on the 30th of September 2027. IPS has continuously let the property from the council since 1996 for a term of 10 years, which expired on the 29th of December 2006, and subsequent leases have been granted, the most recent expiring on the 30th of September 2027. IPS has become a very important training provider and contributes to the local economy to a great degree, particularly in engineering. They currently have 450 apprentices in training, which will increase to over 570 in the autumn intake. This property was declared surplus by Cabinet on the 29th of October 2024, and IPS are not in a position to buy it. IPS are therefore seeking a longer lease which will benefit the council and can be sold with the benefit of such lease, allowing more certainty for buyers, as well as continuing the provision of the service. There are two options. A, as set out at 5.1, a variation of the lease with a new longer lease and supplementary agreement, or B, Cabinet rejects the proposal and the property will be sold subject to the existing lease and supplementary agreement, which would not enable IPS to secure its future beyond September 2027. Given the importance of vocational training, option A is strongly recommended.
Thank you very much indeed, Zoe. A couple of bits from my perspective. Firstly, certainly, if I think back to where we originally made surplus a number of non-operational buildings, we were very, very clear, two things. This isn't a fire sale, and actually SIPFA were clear that we were taking the right approach on this. I refer back to the comments earlier in the meeting. And B, we were very clear that this would be looked at absolutely on a case-by-case basis, and the existing tenants would have a detailed conversation. And as the report rightfully says, it's very clear, and people and residents and the wider public can see that. The conversation has happened. Clearly, the small but perfectly formed property team that we have here at Medway Council have had that conversation, and that's obviously started with, would you like to buy the property? No, we can't. And therefore we come to what we've got in front of us tonight. So from that perspective, I absolutely support option A as it is laid out in 5.1, which are the recommendations. That gives Adam Bryant, our Director of Place, the relevant delegated authority to make sure through his team the relevant conversations happen. And the report is clear that ultimately we want a situation which is a win-win. We want it, of course, to be a win for council taxpayers of Medway, but if it means that it gives that long-term security to IPS as well, who are doing and have always done a fantastic job on the issue of apprenticeships, both here in Medway and further afield, absolutely we want to be supporting that as well. So hopefully what this report does tonight is two things: gives that clarity to this individual set of circumstances, and actually a wider reassurance to other organisations who perhaps that conversation hasn't quite happened yet, or they're in the early stages of it, to say, look, we are taking an absolutely bespoke case-by-case approach to this. And there will be occasions where it may be in the best interest of the council to sell directly to the tenant if it meets best value. That is available to us as well. All things are possible. So absolutely recognising that, and therefore I very much will be supporting option A and therefore the recommendations as you laid them out. Zoe. I can't see anybody else, so Zoe, if there's anything else you want to add before we go to the vote.
I don't think so. I think it's a win-win, really, because whoever purchases the property will be getting an income from it, and it's a sustainable income, because that service is going to continue, hopefully. So it's a win-win.
Thank you very much. Is the recommendation as laid out in paragraph 1 agreed? Thank you very much. That concludes tonight's meeting. Thanks as always to officers, to the brilliant team making sure that those at home can watch us, to our local democracy reporter for being here, and we'll see you for the special full council later on in the month. Thanks everybody.